She's good. Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity today to share part of my heart with you. Nakba, catastrophe. Sumud, resistance. Hurriya, freedom. A few months ago, I had the honor to travel to Gaza as part of a medical delegation with 12 other healthcare professionals from the US and Canada. We spent 10 days in Gaza and 3 days in the West Bank and Jerusalem. I must tell you, I'm not here today to comfort you. That was my role in Gaza. Prophetic ministry is comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable. In that vein, qissa, story, narrative. Everyone has their own story. What is your worst story? How might your narrative of that event be different from someone else involved? 1948 marks the founding of the State of Israel, and for Zionists, this is a story of celebration, for finally a people without a land settled a land without a people, as the saying goes. For Palestinians, it is their story of catastrophe, or Nakba. It is their personal horror story of when 750,000 Palestinians, Christian and Muslim, were expelled from their land and homes. Of those expelled, 470,000 of them were forced into refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon, and other parts of Palestine, including the Gaza Strip. Many of these refugees and their descendants remain in these camps today. It is also a qissa of death. 530 Arab villages were erased from the land to make way for the creation of a new Jewish state. Many massacres happened in villages during this land siege, most notably the massacres in the Arab villages of Deir Yassin and Dawameh. In April 1948, the Arab village of Deir Yassin, which had a non-aggression pact with the Haganah, or Jewish paramilitary forces, is where the most infamous massacre occurred. Over 115 men, women, and children were slaughtered, their mutilated bodies stuffed down wells. The massacre in October 1948 in the village of Dawameh near Hebron left over 450 men, women, and children dead in the streets. Elderly men who had sought refuge inside the mosque were found massacred. I share this history not to demonize one side. There are many brave Israeli voices working for justice and peace, standing up to their government. I share this history because it is not shared in our country, because we are the last country in the world to acknowledge this history. I share this in an effort to move towards peace. How are we to move forward towards a place of peace if the past is not recognized? I share this because I have learned where there's a man who has no voice, there ours shall go singing. It is fitting that the same month I journeyed to Israel, Palestine to witness resistance in its purest form, that the theme for Soul Matters, a spirituality discussion group in this church, was resistance, or sumud. What does it mean to be a people of resistance? According to Soul Matters, it has a very broad meaning, from not conforming to cultural standards to ending silence about things that matter. According to Palestinians, it means something much more primal. For Palestinians, to exist is to resist. الوجود هو المقاومة. اليأس, hopelessness. I kept a journal during my journey. Some of the days were just too painful that I could barely move at night, much more write. Other days I had a lot to say. I had a hard time allowing myself these feelings, as I kept negating my feelings, saying, I have no right to be this upset. I'm just bearing witness, not living this. I realize now I should have been kinder to myself. Perhaps I could have been more useful to my sisters and brothers in Gaza had I been kinder to myself. Now I will share parts of my journal and emails I sent to my family with you. Sunday, January 17th. My heart breaks every day here. It's crushing sometimes, the suffering and hopelessness. It's just incredible. Today, I spent my workday at Aisha Women's Empowerment Clinic. They serve the most marginalized and destitute of Gaza. Actually, they will serve anyone who walks through their door. But it only seems to be those who have it worst go there, perhaps because there may be a few more resources for those who have a little money. Today sucked. It was horrible, heartbreaking, and miserable. I don't know how to deal with today. I don't know how to process it, and I only listened. The stories these women told me made me physically ill. One woman told me how, for a while, she had begged a butcher shop owner for scraps, anything to feed her 7 children, 3 of whom were disabled, and her husband, who has been disabled since the 2014 war on Gaza. She would take the intestines and scraps from the butcher, cook them with bread, and feed her family. Now her husband and 4 of her children are sick from the food. I think they may have kidney failure from E. coli. They are literally starving. This beautiful woman pointed to her clothes and shoes, and between her sobs, she told me that everything she has right now, she got from Aisha Women's Empowerment Clinic. Another woman told me how she and her children had been living in a tent since 2014 when her husband was killed in the war. All of these women had their young children with me. The youngest was 2. In front of their children, they told me their stories. One woman told me of the 3 times she had tried to commit suicide. Each time, one of her children stopped her. She described each suicide attempt in detail to me. First, trying to jump off a building. Second, trying to overdose on pills. And her last attempt was trying to walk into traffic. Many of the women told me of the many occasions their children asked them, "Why did you have me? If all I have to look forward to is this misery, why did you give birth to me?" Another woman told me how she tried to sell one of her kidneys to be able to support her family. When she told me this, 7 other women in the room chimed in that they had heard the same thing. They could sell a kidney too, but the option never materialized. If the buyer had been legit, they would have given a kidney in a heartbeat. Incredible. Another woman's question shook me. She asked, "In the U.S., you have rights for humans. Even animals have rights in the U.S. Why can't we have those rights? We are human." The organization served us juice and a packaged cookie while there. I gave mine to the children. There is no economy, no work, and no infrastructure here because of the siege. There is no freedom of movement. There has been almost no reconstruction since the 2014 war, as building materials are not allowed in. 96% of the water is unfit for human consumption, and most Gazans get only 4 hours of electricity per day, as the remaining power plant was destroyed in the last war as a form of collective punishment. These women and children have absolutely nothing but misery. The only hope they have is for an early death. The misery, poverty, and hopelessness were inescapable. I felt completely worthless. This reality is incredible. الوجود هو المقاومة. To exist is to resist. Monday, January 18th. Today, I visited a kindergarten, an orphanage, and a clinic that treats malnourished children ages newborn to 5 years old called Ard al-Insan. This clinic treats 50,000 malnourished children each year, and they reach only a fraction of those who need them. Then I went to Allah's house. She's my translator, and we have become fast friends. Allah lives in northern Gaza, in the neighborhood of Beit Lahia, which is very dangerous, as is the southern margin of Gaza, like Rafah, because they are the first areas to be bombed or invaded as they're on the border. Allah told me of the last war in 2014 when a missile landed in her backyard. I can see where it was. She told me of digging her 22-month-old baby out from under a pile of rubble in her crib, not knowing if she was dead or alive. Allah was 8 months pregnant at the time with Maria, her second baby. After they rescued baby Salma from the rubble, she recounted to me what it was like to run down the street, running from bombs, while 8 months pregnant with her husband and baby, thinking they would die at any moment. Incredible. But the people here are so kind and so happy to see an American, and if I were them, I don't know if I could be that kind. At the tops of the buildings, you will see that the top floors have been blown off, rebar sticking out still. Then the 1 or 2 floors below are damaged too. No windows, partially destroyed walls, etc. But it's clear people are still living in those units. Despite the sea of unknown depth, full of unmet needs and misery, there is still an infectious, persistent resilience and warmth in spite of everything. Today, I saw orphans with lifeless eyes. I touched them, stroked their hair, and spoke to them in my limited Arabic. A 7-year-old child in Gaza has lived through 3 wars. Today, I saw the most densely populated refugee camp in the world, Jabalia, with abject poverty, intensely crowded conditions, and half-exploded buildings crumbling after the latest assault. Let me tell you, you haven't seen a slum until you've been to a refugee camp. It is so very poor. But the people there are so kind and so happy to see an American here. Incredible. The contrast between yesterday and today for me could not have been greater. Yesterday, I saw complete despair and hopelessness. I saw misery in its finest form, a monster devouring those it was near to. It was horrible, and I have my luxurious life to return to. I don't know how to return to that. Today, I saw hope and resilience to the worst circumstances. I saw joy and love, even laughter. I saw life carrying on as much as one can carry on under these circumstances. The simple act of cooking a meal is remarkable. On this day, I saw a collective middle finger thrown to the siege. الواجد هو المقاومة. To exist is to resist. Tuesday, January 19th. My heart broke again today. My days are full and very meaningful. And FYI, I have a greater chance of being hit by a car and killed here than being a victim of violence, unless it is during an Israeli offensive. And just so you know, Israel is not attacking right now, so I'm very, very safe. Is Dad reading these? Are you telling him about my trip? My dad was very, very worried. I am fine and I am safe. Don't worry. How is everyone? How are my girls? I'm winding down now, 7 p.m. here. We went to Rafah and to 4 different centers. I saw where Rachel Corrie was killed. We had special permission to go to the Egyptian border. We saw horrible craters in the ground from Egypt destroying the tunnels and flooding a freshwater aquifer with salt water. Soon there will be no fresh water for Gazans. Doing this is also poisoning the soil. This is important because Rafah is the breadbasket of Gaza. Egypt is destroying the tunnels and the last freshwater aquifer with American orders and American dollars on behalf of Israel. Israel has drones overhead to monitor the destruction as they don't trust U.S. reports. We had a special tour of the border area from the deputy mayor of Rafah. We saw the exterior of tunnels already destroyed. These tunnels are what brought goods, anything from medicine, food, electronics, clothes, household items, and toys to Gaza. It also connected families in Egypt and Gaza. Of course, weapons were brought in, but don't they have a right to resist? Under international law, they have that right. There were 950 tunnels between Egypt and Gaza. These tunnels are what made an economy possible in Gaza. Now they're gone. The only security / police / military here is Hamas. Their resources are so limited and primitive that they cannot be qualified as a military. Even calling them police is stretching it. Their capabilities are primitive by comparison to Israel. Israel is the 4th most powerful military in the world, thanks to the US, with nuclear weapons. Palestinians are a mostly unarmed civilian population. The two sides are vastly unequal, and to discuss this issue as if they are equals is absurd. Everyone I spoke with does not support Hamas. They all say the same thing. I am not Hamas. I am not Fatah. I am a person like you. I want peace. Claims of ISIS here seem to be fabricated as well. Perhaps to justify another assault? Every single person here says the same thing. No ISIS. Besides, ISIS and Hamas are mortal enemies. There is almost no electricity here. In our hotel, yes, we have it most of the time, but that is because of generators. In the places in Rafah I have been to twice, never have they had electricity while I have been there. Every time I have been visiting a center, if there was electricity when I arrived, it has always gone out while I am still there. Israel controls 100% of the electricity and water to Gaza. Everywhere we go, they serve us coffee and tea and a treat, which is usually a packaged cookie or something. I almost never take it and give it to the women or children I'm talking with. I only take it the times I don't want to be rude. I'm carrying my protein bars with me and have yet to eat one. I give them to the children I see. I walked on the beach tonight next to a Dera restaurant, the site where the 4 boys, cousins and brothers, were massacred while playing soccer on the beach in 2014 in the middle of the day by the IDF in front of several international news crews. I said a little prayer and gathered some shells. It felt like sacred ground. But that is how every centimeter feels here. Someone was killed violently everywhere here, whether I have learned of their death or not. Friday, January 22nd. Today we had to get special permission to tour northeastern Gaza. This is very dangerous as IDF routinely shoots into this area for no reason. We almost didn't go as it looked like there would be an invasion with Israeli tanks and artillery lining up at the border. Aside from the inevitability of another attack, toxicity is the highest danger to Gazans now. There are alarmingly high rates of breast and brain cancers, especially among young people here. But there is no way to assess this epidemiologically, as there is no infrastructure. After the 2009 war, depleted uranium was discovered by Italian teams in Israeli missile craters in Gaza. Since then, all labs in Gaza have been destroyed. Children scavenge through these craters and piles of rubble and garbage with bare feet, searching for anything they can eat or sell. The people have little to no hope. They are frank about their future. They are almost all malnourished. It is horrible. But they still find a way to live and try to be happy. Everywhere we go, we reinforce with them that we are amazed by their ability to cope and recognize their refusal to adapt. We ask them what their strategies are for coping, and we ask them how they give themselves credit for coping. They don't want to talk about resiliency anymore. And the group I am with, the people who have come here several times, say they have never seen this much despair. They're just waiting for the next attack. My heart breaks every day, over and over. They even say, you get to leave. El-wajid huwa al-muqawamah. To exist is to resist. My intention is not to shame anyone for their private struggles or acts of resistance. My intention is to share with you another narrative of resistance, one so basic and primal I cannot find a word for it. Why is this particular conflict important? because this suffering is a direct result of U.S. money and policy, because your tax dollars, at the rate of $10 million per day, directly fund this occupation and siege. Your government's unwavering and unequivocal support of Israeli policy is what enables this suffering. Of course, Israel has a right to exist. But what about the indigenous, dispossessed people of that land who have fewer rights than animals have here in the U.S.? Don't they deserve the same rights, freedoms, and opportunities as Israelis, as you and me? This issue is one I am speaking out about because this is one issue you can change. You don't have to travel to the Middle East. At the very least, urge your politicians to attach conditions to those $10 million per day. Speak up, learn more about this issue, the history and the current situation. Diversify your media sources. Question the way you hear reports about this conflict in our media. The language often used in our mainstream media is heavily biased against Arabs and Muslims. The current policies are not sustainable to either side, not to our Israeli sisters and brothers, and certainly not to our Palestinian sisters and brothers. To end the suffering, the power lies with us, with we, the people. This is where we can end it, right here, right now, here at home. All you have to do is say no more, not in my name. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development released a study last summer which found that if things don't change in Gaza, it will be uninhabitable by 2020. Gaza will be uninhabitable by 2020. From what I witnessed, even that is a generous timetable. So this means 2 million people face annihilation by 2020. 2 million people face annihilation by 2020. In this day and age, incredible. This time, nausea and terror accompany that word, incredible. People here don't know. They don't know that this is all being done in their names, with their money. Incredible. The people of Gaza are starving, both literally and figuratively. Literally, I don't need to explain. Figuratively, they are cut off from the rest of the world, and they are starving to be a part of it. The international community calls Gaza the world's largest open-air prison. Frankly, this description is incorrect and inadequate in my opinion. Prisoners in prison get water, food, and medical care. Many Gazans don't get that. Incredible. One of the main things that attracted me to Unitarian Universalism is the long history of working for social justice, even when it was unpopular, especially when it was unpopular. We Unitarians pride ourselves on being on the forefront of social justice issues. But I have to tell you, this one issue has almost consistently been a huge disappointment for me while trying to address it in my Unitarian church in Ohio and here. After September 11th, 2001, at West Shore Unitarian Church in Ohio, I was so very proud to be on the committee that planned and put on an Arab-Asian festival in the community to build bridges between Americans and Arabs and Muslims post 9/11. But subsequent attempts at dialogue on Israel and Palestine were met with hostility. I've had a little support here at First Unitarian, but I've also encountered a great deal of apathy and defensiveness. I get that this is a tough issue. I get it. But the dialogue on this issue has been one-sided for many decades. It is time we hear another narrative, a narrative that, for some reason, we have trouble listening to in this country because we fear Arabs and Muslims. We must listen to their stories and acknowledge their suffering. We must open our eyes and our hearts to our role in their suffering. Perhaps we fear being called anti-Semitic. Questioning the oppressive and segregationist policies of a government that we fund at the rate of $10 million a day is not anti-Semitic. Insisting that that particular government give equal rights to all people in that country is not anti-Semitic. In fact, it is one of our 7 core principles, the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Also, the word Semite is consistently misused in our society. Semitic is not an ethnicity, but rather a language group. The term Semites refers to people who speak a Semitic language like Arabic, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Phoenician. Semite does not refer to an ethnic or religious group. My Unitarian friends, we have dropped the ball on this issue. We are not leaders on this issue, not for 1 millisecond. So far, the Presbyterian Church of the USA, United Methodist Church, United Church of Christ, Mennonite Central Committee, Conference of Major Superiors of Men, Alliance of Baptists, and Quaker Friends Fiduciary Corporation have all passed resolutions in their general assemblies to divest from U.S. companies that support Israel's military occupation of the Palestinian territory and support the BDS movement, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanction movement. These denominations have been leaders on this issue for at least 3 years. The struggle I have faced within my own chosen faith community on this issue has been a tremendous disappointment to me. Only yesterday at UU General Assembly did BDS come up for a vote, and it failed. My trip to Gaza changed me profoundly. The word incredible is stuck inside, outside, and throughout me. No matter how hard I try to shake it, I can't. This level of suffering and despair, incredible. This word haunts me. It rips my heart and soul to shreds. It takes me to a place where I feel things are so lost, broken, and forsaken that I fear there is no way out. It also puts those shards and pieces back together and warms me from the inside out. Incredible is the spirit, perseverance, and resourcefulness I experienced by the incredible people in Gaza working every day to just live. Incredible is the choice they must make every day to just live in spite of the horrific circumstances they must endure. Incredible is the light inside of me, lit by the people of Gaza, that keeps me pushing and working for change. It is also the out-of-control fire that keeps me trapped inside the burning room and is trying to burn me alive. Every spring at my daughter's elementary school, they celebrate Book Character Day by dressing up as their favorite book character. It's always one of the bright spots of the year. This year, I struggle. I struggle as I have every day since I returned from Gaza. I struggle letting myself feel joy and happiness in my luxurious life here. Tuesday, May 3rd. How do I reconcile Book Character Day with Gaza? How do I celebrate Book Character Day in spite of the reality I saw in Gaza? How do I find joy in one and still recognize the other? I have no idea sometimes how to move forward after Gaza, and that is truly a loss. For all of humanity, I'm frozen. Could this be my version of resistance, not giving up the struggle? There is a fine line between letting that struggle move one into action and suddenly finding oneself paralyzed by it, eventually becoming destroyed by it. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not here to comfort you today. Today, I bring this human story of unfathomable, yet completely avoidable suffering and misery to you. What you do with it is up to you. Gaza ano uhibik.
Blinding flash of white light lit up the sky over Gaza tonight. People running for cover, not knowing whether they're dead or alive. They came with their tanks and their planes, with ravaging fiery flames, and nothing remains, just a voice rising up in the smoky haze. We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight. Women and children alike, murdered and massacred night after night, while the so-called leaders of countries afar debated on who's wrong or right. But their powerless words were in vain, and the bombs fell down like acid rain. But through the tears and the blood and the pain, you can still hear that voice through the smoky haze. We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight. We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in the night without a fight. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
My closing words are from Martin Luther King, Jr. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Will you stand as you are able and join me? I extinguish the symbolic flame of this gathering. May we carry its light into the world. The service has ended. Go in peace, go making peace.